Welcome to PolyCast, a civilization podcast focused on game strategy.
DanQ.
Makahlua.
TheMeInTeam.
QNL.
With guest co-hosts
colonelmustard.
King Morgan.
We are all bright and chipper this morning. I mean, can't you just feel the energy? I'm getting excited right as I sit here. Maybe a little overexcited.
Whoa, hey now.
I'm just saying.
Radio, welcome. I'm King Morgan, and this is episode 94 of PolyCast. We're here today with Colonel Mustard.
Hello.
We have our usual host, Mr. Daniel Quirk.
Hello, everyone.
Lisa.
Hi.
Makahlua.
Still need more caffeine, thanks.
And of course, Philip.
I draw the number 1337 at the public speakery.
In Forum Talk, Terra maps, are they racist? In the Time Machine, previous Civ title naysayers. In the Research Lab, do away with the settler and beginnings and endings. Then in the news, Civilization 5 shipping info reveals some details.
This is Forum Talk, where we investigate hot Civ issues in the forums.
Tim Crew Green says, wondering if anyone else has worried about the implications of Terra maps. The fact that it is purportedly a quote-unquote realistic world where the entire populace of one landmass consists of barbarians seems a bit off to me. Come to think of it, isn't the term quote-unquote barbarian quite derogatory in the first place? There's quite a bit of discussion here about whether this is racist and whether barbarians are a derogatory term. It's part of the game. I guess I haven't thought about it a whole lot, certainly not in these terms, and certainly not in respect to certain maps and where they spawn. I guess I always considered barbarian to be more of a primitive human or ancient human as opposed to anything else.
I don't know where to start with this.
I want to say that when I initially played Terra, I had many of the same thoughts that this person did. At the same time, the important caveat here is that civilization shouldn't necessarily be taken as an historical approximation of real life. I do see his point that one land is filled with civilizations and the other filled with unaffiliated, uncivilized groups, because by definition, that's what barbarians are, uncivilized. I wouldn't necessarily say it's racist, just because that brings into the whole other question whether people in the, quote, new world, unquote, are of a different race.
Let's do an English major tearing apart here. The first thing is that he says the fact that it is purportedly a realistic world. Is there anywhere in Civ that actually says that Terra is supposedly based on a realistic world? Because I don't recall that. It says that there's an old world and new world, and that's a vague reference to how people who were colonizing the quote-unquote new world considered it at the time. But you gotta remember that the Mayans and the Incans can easily be the ones doing the colonizing here. So, I don't see that Civ purports it to be really realistic in the first place. Second, I don't get how you can possibly construe racism here. I mean, really, it's a question of civilizations themselves as opposed to the races that represent them. And again, you have the entire spread of possible civilizations represented in the old world, so to speak. So this just completely fails in terms of being racist regardless. I was a little bit interested just to see the history of the term barbarian that was explained further down in the thread, so and I guess it wasn't a total waste for me, but yeah, I always roll my eyes a little bit when I see threads like this. It's just ridiculous.
Not to get overly political, but I do think that being civilized is a point of view to the person who is determining who is civilized and who is not. You probably always think of yourself as civilized, whatever time you might be living in. And people are always judging each other. If a civilization has never met other civilizations, it wouldn't have an idea of how civilized other civilizations are. To say that it's racist, I think, is a very 2000s kind of point of view.
From the original poster, it seems he's getting his knickers in a twist, because Alright, it's loosely based on civilizations competing on one known landmass and then colonising, if you will, the next landmass. It's just the rules of Civ that if you have unbog-busted land, i.e. another continent with no civilizations, just bog-busted land, you're going to get barbarian spawn. Game designers haven't balanced it so that you're colonising barbarians, if you like. They're just there.
Unless you turn them off.
Yeah, but there's no special rules that says on a Terra map you will be invading barbarians. It's just part of the game. They're there.
Yeah.
Just don't be so silly, really.
You know what kind of bothers me, and I wish that weren't the case? There is a built-in mechanic in this game that doesn't require any modding at all, called a minor civilization. And maybe they didn't do it just because they were worried about more threads like this showing up. But a minor civ can actually tech, and it has its own Diplo status, although everyone starts at war with it. And it doesn't have any unique units or buildings, but it functions as a civ instead of the kind of semi-strange barb tech-sharing thing that TheMeInTeam does in the world builder there. It would be interesting to see that on Terra, but Terra is the only map where you consistently get such a large chunk of land that's just not populated until mid-game, so it would be a shame to not have it.
Yeah, if in the game settlers were harder to build and you didn't have that many cities on a decently sized map, you might have more of the barbarian cities coming up.
Or if you used your caravel to explore and found a bunch of infantry and tanks and somebody so advanced that they're getting ready to launch a spaceship or something. I think that'd be the other possibility here.
Pretty low. The AI relies on trades between AIs and with the human for a big chunk of its tech rate. Even true civs, if they start isolated, you'll notice that they're pretty bad technology-wise.
Yeah, they don't seem to follow a strategy in as much as they tend to grab all the techs.
Yeah.
There's an interesting post in the thread there, 47 by Ophelia Immortal. So it's not really all that racist, just an attempt to infuse some realism. The New World was so starved of many key development resources that the nations on it didn't have much chance to grow into large centralised states. Got a bit of an issue with that, you see, being from Britain. Britain's got what? Some dodgy coal, and that's it for resources, and yet at one point the sun never settled the British Empire. So that really strikes me as an awful analogy.
Well, I mean, one could say that they prospered in a large part because of colonialism and quick industrialization and all that, but I would just say that I think some of the issue here is also the name of the map, calling it Terra, which means Earth. One could say that the implication here is that this is more Earth-like than other maps, such as continents, which only denote landmass shape and size, whereas Terra kind of suggests, oh yeah, this is Earth.
You have Earth maps that legitimately include the civs on the Western Hemisphere, though. And even Earth 2 maps where it's randomized, but you still have civs starting off in the New World.
Yeah, Earth 18.
So, and I can see that being possibly connected, but I don't really buy that as a legit argument for racism.
Terra, you see, could apply to any planets that could sustain life as like Earth. So Terra, I would say, would be just a generic Earth-like term. And it just happens to have a second continent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Terra map is racist at all. You could interpret it that way, and if that's the way you've taken it, I think that's unfortunate, but as has already been discussed, I don't see how, by the very nature of it, how it's been implemented, described, named, that it is racist. That's just something that you have assigned for it. Okay. I don't think there's really anything more to be said. I don't think there's anything that needs to be done. I don't think there was any intent, and I don't really think that's a reasonable interpretation either, that it is racist.
Comment of a 12-year-old.
What's that?
Comment of a 12-year-old.
Oh, okay, Morgan, you're saying that the opening post was a comment of a 12-year-old. I thought you were saying my comment was that of a 12-year-old. I'm like, whoa, hey now, let's take a step back here.
Oh, no, the original poster, yeah.
Let me find the West Side Story music.
Moving swiftly on.
You have entered the time machine, where we look back at key moments in Civ history.
people who have been saying crap about Civ 4 before it came out. I was reminded of this because of all the stuff that people have been saying about Civ 5, screenshots, and, oh, look at this screenshot, I don't think it's going to be any good. Well, we all very well full know that whoever's complaining has probably pre-ordered it already anyway. So just wanted to point out some complaints that people had about Civ 4 before it came out. For example, this one thread started out by Dual Alley, which was basically a screenshot analysis thread of Civ 4 before it came out. Initial post goes, have you seen the screenshots for Civ 4 yet? They are ugly. I really hope that they're going to change something about this and it's not going to be this ugly.
That takes to a first Civ 4 screenshots thread started by John Schaefer, lead designer in Civ 5 now.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's just kind of amusing.
That's funny.
The other thread that I wanted to look at was oddities in the Civ 4 info by Microbe. He says, oh, there are some odd things about Civilization 4. It says, you will be able to start in a particular era. Then also, the tech tree will be more flexible as we know, and it will not be split into eras. And then number 2, combat will be more simplified. There will not be separate attack and defense strengths. Units will now have a single base strength.
I don't know about that simplified part.
Yeah, I don't know about that either. Compared to Civ 3, maybe a little bit, but I don't know. I prefer this current combat system to the one in Civ 3. And the tech tree is more flexible, too, compared to Civ 3. Much more black and white, which sort of prerequisite text you needed to get a certain more advanced tech. So that's actually happened. I think that tech trees are split into eras, but not so strictly as they were in Civ 3. Anyway, point is, I feel like much of this griping is about nothing, and people said similarly inflammatory things about Civ 4, and nobody really cares. Except for us.
I think a lot of the excitement and concern over Civ 5 is part because of what has been disclosed that's going to be different from what we know about it, and also the fact that people can't actually play the game right now, so rather realizing they can't invest the hours into playing, they invest hours into describing what they will likely be playing based on somebody else's account, and then making an account of it on your own, and then discussing what the game is going to be like as a result of that. Even what's being discussed now, even if that's been communicated and that's factual, it could still change between now and release, which kind of, in part, makes some of the concern moot. We know that developers 7 otherwise take community suggestions into account. Some of it, we look back and we think, oh, geez, that's just like a ridiculous complaint. But if you think about it at the time when it was just Civ 3 before Civ 4 was out, might be like, oh, I can see why now that was valid at the time, because hindsight is 2020, we have that benefit, but some of it is just getting yourself worked up over, if not nothing, then making a mountain out of a molehill, because we're only getting certain parts of the picture, right? I mean, Praxis has specifically said that, oh, we're not discussing that right now, that's coming in the next coming months, we're not discussing that yet, so we're talking about particular pieces of a puzzle, and those pieces may change still. When you get into those kind of complaints, it's very sensational, very easy to get headlines, or in this case, page views and replies.
They're reading the forums. They're seeing what people are talking about. They have a decent history of listening when the players go, this is broke.
You mentioned Civ 3. The only things I remember from Civ 3 are 3 things. Colonies. If you don't have saltpeter, you're screwed.
I forgot about that.
And button vomit.
Button vomit.
Well, I think if you're a fan, you want to know what's in the game. Right now, the forums everywhere are kind of just full of speculation and guesses, and
yeah, I guess
a lot of the stuff that I've read, I can't even tell you where it came from. It might have been from a screenshot, it might have been from an official press release or some sort of interview done at like PAX East. It might have been somebody lobbying for a certain civ to be in there, or, some of this stuff is just people trying to figure out how they can take their Civ 4 experiences and make it into what will be available in Civ 5. And quite honestly, we're not going to know until the game comes out. We can take little bits of information here and there and try to speculate about whether something will be good or bad, but I think there's always going to be that. And as long as we don't know, people will continue to defend or criticize whatever they don't like about it, or whatever they do like about it.
Yeah, I just see a lot of the comment as pretty irrelevant, really. I'm going to buy the game, whatever. To be honest, speculating about it, it's just taking up valuable Civ 4 time. You might as well. Civ 4. They're wasting your time browsing some silly forum.
Well, I actually wasn't around when Civ 4 was first released, so it's actually kind of fun to go through and read some of this stuff, knowing what's actually in Civ 4 and how much I like Civ 4. But I've certainly had those thoughts about Civ 5. How will certain of the features that we're aware of be different than what we're used to in Civ 4, and is that a good thing? If anything, one of the things that I don't like about some of the speculation that's going on is people are increasingly willing to lobby for the way they like it and just shut off all other ideas. I think that's one of the things that makes the Civ series great, is that it's a good game for everybody because it allows so many different playing styles. Some people like to build a huge army and go out and conquer the map. Other people like to go for culture or economy. There's just so many different things you can focus on, and it appeals single player, multiplayer, pit boss, all that kind of stuff. It appeals to a large community. I think to say it has to be this way because that's the way I like it and all this other stuff, that is one frustration that I have with some of the stuff that's out on the forums.
It's just a thing with players in any sort of game, whether it's a single player or an MMO. They're used to doing things a certain way, and anything that changes this way they've gotten used to, everybody gets antsy about. Even if it's a good change, like, I don't know about this.
And I guess the way I feel about it, we're not going to know until it comes out.
Exactly.
Come on into the research lab, where we explore concepts that are not in Civ yet, but may be in the future.
This thread was started by Decimatus, saying, basically do away with the settler. I know, it is practically the core of the franchise. Basically, we want to make the worker into the dynamic for city building. Let's call them citizen units. So it all revolves around the worker even more so than it already does now. My interpretation, not quoting from him. Quoting from him again. You start out in your capital. A city's population is all contained inside the original square, and any that it expands into over time. Anytime you have more than one population, you can spend a couple of turns to push out a citizen unit, which lowers the city population by 1. This citizen unit can basically set down on a workable tile anywhere it can walk to. When it does, that tile has an effective population of 1 or more if it turns into a village or town. However, the further it is away from your city, the less your empire benefits from its product, be that food, resources, etc. Once that area of citizen reaches a certain level of commerce or production, you get an event prompt that asks you which local tile you want to place the city hall for the new city. Bam, you have a new city that can start growing and furthering your empire. At the same time, you can have citizen units all over the place pouring resources into your empire, however inefficiently if they are far from a city, unquote, like you mentioned before. And then later on in some follow-up posts, he, after some initial feedback, he says, quote, having citizen units instead of settlers doesn't take away government planning or pre-planned city constructions. It simply makes it more natural. The ability for the citizen units to change the game into a more organic system based on population rather than cities would be a good change for the genre, unquote. Razor Wing, post number 14. Realism is good and all, but if it doesn't add to the fun of the game, it doesn't have a chance of being added in. As described, and it is quite detailed in some parts, a little confusing here and there, needing to read a couple of his posts to really get your mind wrapped around it, but maybe it is more realistic, but I don't see the advantage over the current system, and as Kamikaze, he says a major problem I can see is the computer's inability to choose suitable locations for founding cities. I mean, they kind of have that issue already to a certain degree. Yeah. So I just think that this is making it more complicated for the human, and so if you're talking about single-player games or a multiplayer game, wherever there's an AI, it's just going to be that much more complicated. I commend the kind of thinking out of the box, and it sounds interesting in theory, but I don't think in practice it would be that desirable.
It is an interesting idea, but it isn't something I'd like to see in Civ. The guy basically said it himself, that the settler is a key element in the franchise, but it isn't just that. If you think about it in any of the known Civ models that we've played to date, I know I'm being old school here, you would need to change a lot of things that he hasn't addressed so far. Like, what do you do when you conquer somebody else's city? How does your culture factor in against their culture then? Or what do you do when you get unbalanced starts in terms of aggressive settling, which might have saved you before? Now you can't do that. So now you're stuck on that peninsula forever, basically, because you couldn't get out of there in time. I know you could say just balance the starting system better, but that's not so easy to do. There's a lot of factors that would make this difficult to implement beyond the fact that it's just getting away from standard playing that we're used to. I don't really have a huge problem with the whole settler thing. And as someone else pointed out, people don't just live in cities anyway, they also live all around them. So the settler model is flawed just the same as the regular city model is flawed in Civ. Overall, it's an interesting idea. It's fun to think about it, but I can't really picture it in a Civ game.
Yeah, I think Phil makes a good point that'd be good material for some other game, probably not Civ. We're constantly having this issue with Civ here where just because Civilization uses the names of real leaders, real civilizations, and real cities doesn't necessarily mean that it's trying to be an approximation of real life. One thing that I do have a problem with is vast numbers of people simply don't venture out in unison to found new cities. That is Alpha Centauri stuff. That was in the first post of this thread. I would kind of disagree with that.
Just to further kind of what the last poster as of this recording says, a system that features uncontrolled organic settlement is fine, but it could not replace the settler unit. It would have to exist alongside planned settlement. I guess I could see you trying to do that. It's kind of a way we have that. We can have villages that then grow into colleges and that there are people there, but that really doesn't count towards population. That's commerce, which indirectly, of course, then influences how well your city can grow, and then your city can grow from that, but it's not so direct in that sense. So I suppose you could work within that system to add some kind of, as I said, organic settlement as it was described here, but replacing the settler unit, I guess, is what I was kind of focusing on. There would be still a fair bit of game balance considerations in there in terms of what Phil said at other points as well.
I think Civ is a game of choices that you have to make, and one of the things that I always find myself doing is deciding what the pros and cons of any choice are. To build a settler, your city stops growing, takes some number of turns, and most importantly, it's where I want to put it. I can take a settler and I can settle where I want to. If this would still have some of the upside and downside kind of aspects to making the decision and still give you the control where instead of sort of in a nomadic way, your cities kind of pop up, I guess I'd be willing to consider it, but I do kind of like the settler model.
Beginnings and endings, started by the DS. She'd go through a couple different ways to start or finish the game. One of them's in the game already, the late start. He just said that he likes it a lot. An unequal time start, early end high score wins, early end first tech wins, early end first 2A score wins, and then mission-based ending system. There's some suggestions there on how to get a game done faster or with different rules.
Yeah, I actually do kind of like this idea because one common complaint is that Civ 4 games are just notoriously long. And sometimes I just really want to get it over with. I feel like if in the Middle Ages, Renaissance ages, I'm that far ahead, I'd like to find a way to end it quickly without using the frickin' Apostolic Palace. I hate that.
This happens with us in the Saturday game a lot of the time, where we get to a point where we know we're ahead, we know we're going to win, but we have to sit there for another 100 turns building up the army to actually go do the crushing.
It's because you guys play on levels that are below your capabilities.
Okay, no, see, that doesn't take 100 turns, that just takes like 10 or 20 turns, and you go smash. That's a fun kind. I'm talking about when it's a higher difficulty, and you end up only fighting with maybe a small tech difference, so you have to build more, which takes longer, which lets them build up a bigger garrison, and it's like the snowball effect.
Well, there's a lot of things you can do to speed up the games. I mean, we discussed my guide to that in an earlier PolyCast episode. But some of these would be, in my opinion, a fairly decent way to end the game early. The ones that really interest me are the first 2A score wins. Some of these would not be viable on high levels, like early and high score wins. That's kind of a screw job. You start off with half of a DDI score, actually less than that, and you're not going to catch them until like late Renaissance at the earliest if you conquer them then. But the first 2A score, if you make the score sufficiently high and plan for it, that could be interesting. Missions, depending on how well thought out they are and how challenging it is, could be very fun or it could flop. But it certainly can't be any worse than the Apostolic Palace, so there you go. And the first to attack, I mean, people love liberalism race so much. I think that would be kind of fun to do something like that, where you just bulb all out for it and try to get it by 180, which apparently is possible. So yeah, this would add some dynamic elements to the game. Not something you'd probably want to do every time, but it'd be fun.
But if you do achieve these and the game is over, are you still satisfied?
Depends on who the player is.
Right. I guess that's my first question. I'm always looking at the scoreboard, and it's something I check every single turn. But your score doesn't actually really have a whole lot to do, except in real long-term situations with how you're doing it. So some of the score stuff I'd have to think about. I do like the idea of maybe smaller missions during the game, some other things to try to achieve along the way, but I'm not sure that I would be satisfied if I were the first to attack and I ended up winning. I was having a great game and I really could have gotten another victory. I was really on my way or something like that. I'm not sure that that would be as satisfying to me. On the other hand, there's always the ability to keep on going in for one more turn, so you could keep continuing.
I was under the impression that these are something you would set before the game, too. Much like you pick your current victory conditions, but maybe not have these being default options. That way, if you want to do something a little bit more novel, you can, it's there, but otherwise you can just not do it.
Yeah, that was my impression as well.
I'm always for more options.
It would be good for some formats. Although, yeah, score, there's a lot of things that bother me about score. Probably the biggest thing, at least for our weekend games, so when we do multiplayer and we decide things based on score, is how land pop dominate it, but tech factors in too. And you only share one of those things.
Right.
So that is a bit of a problem. But also, it factors in wonders, and it doesn't really take into account the relative position of the civs, especially militarily. So things can go very differently based on what the scores are if you wait like 50 turns, especially if somebody makes a major tactical error and gets a bunch of city razed or something like that. The only time I would say it's really, really a big deal is if you somehow make it to 2050 AD and nobody's won yet. Then it starts to matter, but other than that, not so much.
I think my favorite is actually the first to either a particular technology and or a particular era, because of course you achieve a certain technology, you can advance to a particular era for things like the race to liberalism, as Phil already mentioned. The mission N, yeah, I could see that as well. Like he suggests, first circumnavigation would work well, for instance, but not with space race and culture, with a few players being rare exceptions. Yeah, I like the options of those two, but I don't even think the score thing should be an option for reasons that have already been identified. And we've already talked about the scoring system and the concerns with that, and I think I'll just interject here as part of this topic. We mentioned our Saturday games and how we play, but unless our listeners have had their espionage slider on 100% for a long time, they probably don't know what the hell we're talking about. We do talk about Civ on this show, but not only do we actually play the game, but we actually play the game with each other. Shocker, I know. It was something we've always done, but for a little more than a year and a half now, there's been a weekly Saturday game with past and present PolyCast co-hosts. It's a cooperative game against the artificial intelligence, and our kind of in-house rule is that, to tie it into the score part, is that the human player with the highest score wins, or in the case of like a permanent alliance, then the combined score. Obviously not endgame score, but in-game score is the one who's declared the quote-unquote winner, and then to end the games, we can actually see the replay. The other human players vassalize themselves to that leader. Here's what's been making news in the Civ community. Civilization 5 shipping information reveals some details about what 2K Games and Valve, the people behind Steam, have with regards to Civilization 5, where players will enjoy the benefits of Steamworks features, including an all-PC version, such as auto-updating, Steam achievements, etc., downloadable content, multiplayer matchmaking. So, downloadable content, first seen for Civilization Revolution, now for Civilization 5, official downloadable content. There's also a digital deluxe edition. We've seen Deluxe Edition before, but there will be a 19th Civ, it seems, the Babylonian civilization and their ruler Nebuchadnezzar II. And then further, gamers who pre-order any version of Civ 5 from Steam will receive the downloadable bonus content, the Cradle of Civilization map pack Mesopotamia, for free when the game is available. The standard edition, $49.99 US suggested retail price, and $10 more for the digital deluxe edition, which VSoma on CFC describes as inflated. Some people are asking, well, what in the heck is Steamworks? Just a little background on that. Well, first, on Steam itself, it's a digital distribution of games as opposed to your standard boxed copies. Steam is by no stretch the only company involved in this business, but it is certainly one of, if not the most major player. Steamworks is kind of the developer front with regards to Steam, which, as described on Wikipedia, is a free development and publishing suite that gives developers access to every component of Steam. This was an agreement between 2K, Civ's publisher, and Valve, and to include Steamworks in Civilization V. So I think it's important to say up front that it's not that to get Civ 5 you must work with Steam. That's not true, but based on, certainly with regards to the downloadable bonus content, Cradle of Civilization map pack, that seems to come from Steam only, and if you want Babylon, you're going to want to be looking at the Digital Deluxe Edition. The Digital Deluxe Edition also includes an in-depth behind-the-scenes at Firaxis with Civ 5 video feature, as well as the soundtrack. So it's not just, oh, I'm paying $10 more for a Civilization. No, you're paying $10 more for a Civilization plus these other three components. Some people are saying that this is a good thing, that this is a bad thing. Whatever your position, it is a thing. It is an interesting development.
And so diplomatic.
It is indeed a thing.
Before people start trashing this whole thing here, well, I'll proceed my comment with the fact that I bought Civ 4 from Steam, and I plan on buying Civilization 5 for Steam. I actually really like Steam. I think it's pretty convenient. Contrary to what the title on the Voodoo Extreme site says, it says Sid Meier's Civilization 5 exclusive to Steam. No. It's not exclusive to Steam. You can buy it in a box at your local whatever store, GameStop.
Or Amazon, for instance, yeah.
Yeah, or Amazon. Like, you can still buy the box. So it's not like 2K is forcing you to download Steam in order to get this game. It just provides another avenue for getting your game. Admittedly, this is the one I would prefer.
I like having my cake and eat it too. Give me access to the digital version, but maybe it's kind of an old school, nostalgic, tangible sort of thing, but I also like to have the box copy.
I agree with that. I like the idea of having maybe a mold, a case, and all of the printed materials that would come with it. Like for Civ 4, it was the tech tree and all of the layout stuff. It's a lot of the stuff that you can find in the Civilopedia, but kind of like that. I actually don't have very much experience with Steam at all. In fact, it seems to be a very divided number of posts here as to whether people like it or they don't, but it looks like you're going to be able to use both methods, so I don't really understand what the real big deal is here. The thing that I think is coming out of the multiplayer community is that you won't be able to play, or I guess people are assuming that you won't be able to play another person that has the limited time downloadable content. So if somebody has a different leader than you have, maybe the game won't work, or a certain map set that may or may not be transferable to you. But I don't know that that stuff has actually been discussed as to whether that will work or not. The way that it worked for the different expansions for Civ 4 in Warlords and BTS is you couldn't play a BTS game against someone with Warlords, or even backwards beyond that. So maybe it'll work that way. But I fully support their ability and choices to deliver the game in the way that they want to. They're going to make the investment in the game. They're going to do all the work, and I think they can market it and sell it in the way they want. People seem awfully upset, and I don't know. I guess I just don't have a whole lot of strong feelings on it, at least not as strong as some of what's posted here.
You say other people are getting steamed? The power of the pun compels me.
I just think that people are under the impression that they have to install Steam in order to get Civ 5, and public service announcement, no, you don't. Anyway.
Before this announcement, people were already certainly on a best of simmer, I think, with regards to whether to get it on Steam or not, and people are very divided. It seems to be that they're porters of Steam, or no, they're not. You could certainly start talking about the digital deluxe edition, like some of that bonus stuff like the video feature, the soundtrack, but to actually get another Civilization, I need to get the digital deluxe edition. I think there's some discussion about that, but I think it's the downloadable bonus content. It says gamers who pre-order any version actually for Civ 5 from Steam, so you don't have to get the deluxe edition in order to get this downloadable bonus content, but you do have to pre-order it from Steam. And as Joel was saying, if that sounds like that's something of interest to you, then that should inform your purchasing decision.
Right. I think they're going to market it in a way that they feel is best, that is going to help them return on their investment as much as possible. I think that's something that any business does, and I haven't really used Steam a whole lot, and I'm not really all that familiar with it. I like the idea of expansion packs, but it sounds like this will be a bunch of smaller versions of expansion packs, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it seems to move away from expansion packs more to downloadable content. And seeing as how this is something that could be pushed to the end user, the fact that you'd have to get it from Steam, in a way makes sense. It's implied anyway that this would be like the first downloadable content offering for Civilization Revolution, different platform, admittedly, but still the same idea in terms of downloadable content, that there was more than just the one, and some of it was free. It started off with free, and then the next one was like $1.50 or $2 or something like that.
Yeah, it's great for 4Axis because they can do more of that. A new map script, a new set of maps, maybe a civ at a time or a pack of 3 civs or something.
The only other feeling that I have on it is some other games you can get ultra-powerful weapons or something that would really throw the game balance out, and that's something I don't think I would like to see. Someone who paid X amount of dollars to get the thing that allows them to win every time or something like that.
An I win button?
Right, the I win button on turn 2.
Come on now, there's no way they would pull something like that in a game like this.
No. I think that's completely against what Civ is all about and the balance that everybody expects.
That's more of a tactic for like free online games. You have to pay a component.
Shoot 'em up games.
Yeah, not something that we see in Civ, but episode 65, there was an article by Soren Johnson, Civ 4's designer, about designing for free and how it ended up being that, oh yes, you can get the free version of the game, but if you want certain in-game advantages, then you would have to pay for it. And that shifted the balance to those people who actually paid for that because they had an advantage. Whereas here, I mean, this is bonus content. I think some people might have more of an argument in terms of, if I want the Babylonian civilization, I have to get the deluxe edition, which includes other things as well, but I have to get the deluxe edition in order to get it.
I don't feel like I can speak really well to it, but this would be a great topic for ModCast. I've found a number of posts here that are discussing the difference between what it is to have a free modding community and providing additional mods and stuff like that, as opposed to what you can get through this delivery system.
I'm sure once more details become public with regards to modding for Civilization 5, that they'll be able to discuss that even more. You're right, that's definitely a front for them, and I think there's even some that were suggesting like that this was kind of negatively impacting on the modding community, but there's a difference between an official channel and an unofficial channel, because someone's like, well, what's the difference between downloadable content and modding? Well, both are still downloadable content, but typically downloadable content, DLC, referring to those things that come from official channels, from developer and or publisher, as compared to modding, which is community-based.
So coming full circle to the conversation we had earlier, I just think this is another thing that's just different. It's not, at least to me, not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just different, and it's another example of we're just not going to know what it is until it comes out.
I think you're also describing PolyCast when you put it that way, too.
Always.
I only ended up with Steam because I bought Portal, and I was always really skeptical of it. But now you should see how long my games list is on here. They do the Christmas sale, and they're doing sales every weekend on things. It was like, I have more things than I have time to play right now. It has paid for itself and made me a convert, I guess.
To be honest, I've never used it. There was the Ferrari, wasn't there, with the music server that you never actually owned the content, you rented it, and then suddenly, bang, they switched it off, and you lost all your music. I've always been a firm believer in physical media.
Steam does have an offline mode. You don't have to be logged in, and the content is stored locally.
Well, yeah. I'm not convinced, to be perfectly honest. I'd much rather have it. I'm old-fashioned like that.
No, it's okay. It's natural to kind of distrust that, given people's other previous bad experiences with proprietary media sharing.
Not that they don't try to hit you with that anyway.
Yeah, this is the Canadian, so I'm the compromise. I like both. Just give me both. Why should it be a choice? Allow me to have it accessible, like through Steam, but oh yes, Steam or whoever, send me a physical copy. And if you want to charge me a little extra for it, that's fine. That's okay. I'm fine with that. I'll do it.
What we should do is keep tabs on all the people who have claimed they will not buy it because of this, because I think it is an awful hard stand to take. I want to play it, so I'm going to get it however it comes.
I've only used Steam in a very limited capacity. I actually got Steam when I was part of the testing team for Civilization for Colonization, and it did not convert me, as I said, to, okay, I want everything on Steam now, but after using it, it stopped me from saying I don't want anything to do with Steam. As I said, I want both now. I'm really demanding. Don't give me one or the other, give me both.
Dan just wants it all.
I do want it all. Like I said, cake and eat it too, absolutely.
Cake. People who've played Portal know why I'm laughing.
I don't know exactly why, but to allude to something else with
know.
regards to cake, it is not a lie. I do want it all. Call in today. In North America, the number is 301-637-7659.
That's 301-637-POLY.
In Europe, 44121-288-7659. That's 44121-288-POLY.
You can Skype us at the PolyCast or email us at thepolycast@gmail.com.
The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
For more information on PolyCast,
Our sibling shows ModCast and RevCast.
Or about PolyCast in general.
Log on to the series' official website at
thepolycast.net.
thepolycast.net.
I gotta say, recording those stock clips was something interesting. Kind of felt like an ad. Sitting in my room by myself and just saying things at complete random.
Yeah, because that's what insane people do when they talk to themselves, right? They tell themselves, "This is PolyCast."
And see, I'm pretty sure I'm insane, and like I'll narrate when I'm buying something at a vending machine when I'm really tired, and people look at me a little strangely.
What, like I'm buying double mint gum or something like that?
Oh no, like I'm looking for exact change, but I'm kind of saying my thoughts out loud because I'm annoyed, and there's like not much time between class, and this is more memory from last year than it is for right now. But yeah, I had some nights like that.
He narrates the vending machine like it's a YouTube video, like a walkthrough. First, you put the quarter in.
It's like, God damn it, do I have a nickel? Do I? Yeah, I do. Okay. Let's work with that then. I wasn't expecting anyone to actually be there, but then of course someone comes around the corner and just looks at me, and I'm the only person in the room.
This has been PolyCast 94. We have been joined by DanQ,
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Makahlua,
I'm having cake with my caffeine now.
Phil, TheMeInTeam,
I'm offensive to racists, non-racists, and weakens.
Joel,
Jeez.
Morgan, King Morgan,
Yeah, goodbye. Thanks for listening.
and me, Lisa QNL.
Well, if I didn't mention caffeine, people would wonder what was wrong with me.
Yeah, well, I'm working the caffeine too.
Oh, Mackie, you think people don't wonder what's wrong with us anyway. So, since we're already in the research lab, why don't we then shift to... Oh, sorry, no, I really should give Mackie the choice if she wants.
Well, gee, yes, let's just do a settler thing.
Okay, so, alright, did you want to introduce that one?
No, you got it.
Jeez. Normally I wouldn't, but you're a hot girl. So, okay, I'll listen to you. If that sounds like that's something of interest to you, then that should inform your purchasing decision. Your purchasing decision. There we go.
Well, there's a purchasing schism, too.
Oh, sorry, was that in bad taste?
Nothing we do on this show is in bad taste. I don't have to edit hardly anything.
Oh, yeah.
What are you talking about? Each of our episodes is like, how long have we been recording? An hour and 46 minutes? There's going to be like an hour and 44 minutes of this release.
What's like the one thing that gets cut?
are saying this in this conversation.
Good call.
That's still going in the bloopers, isn't it?
Might.
Record date?
May 8th, 2010.
Civilization 4, Warlords and Beyond the Sword sound clips, copyright Take-Two Interactive. Copyright Civilized Communication at civcom.net.